So we started with the SAP overview. Welcome all to our new batch of Feb batch. I mention it Feb because probably it will cover February and March, both the months, to complete all the sessions. The sessions will be happen on the weekends, Saturday and Sundays. Each session will be in between 90 minutes to 120 minutes. It's depend on your understanding and question answers. I'll try to cover all the device management and billing and invoicing concept. I'll cover maximum of this concept, but not all because everything is not able to cover within the server. So whatever I can cover, I'll try to cover it all, but I'll conceptually, I'll give you the knowledge, almost all the concept in billing and invoicing. Okay, so let's start. Now, when we discuss about utility, and utility is anything which we consume in our daily life. So whether it is a edible oil or your biscuits or newspaper or cold drinks, anything we call the utilities. Now, utilities is used to survive our life. Now, utilities of two types. One is called public utility, other one is called uh, we call that commercial utility or private utility. So now public utility, which is mostly uh, control our lives, and without that we cannot live. Example, water, example, electricity, telecommunication system, all these are called public utility. So if you understand the government, how the government control the government control the people by controlling these utilities, the public utilities. So all for all each of these utilities, there would be some ministry in the state government or central government. So utility is a essential part of our life. Now these public utilities mostly link to many business areas. So we can say electricity, gas, water, multimedia. Then we have new type of utilities like wastewater, then waste management, then telecom, then district heating. Apart from this, slowly, public utility introducing, like as I already mentioned here, multimedia. So they are introducing the internet connectivity, the cable televisions, all those things are coming under utility. Now here there is a concept called district heating. This is mostly used in the European countries or the cold countries where they're looking to make their housing heating. So their house heating will happen through the hot water. So the hot water will flow inside the, you can say the metal pipes, and those metal pipes make the room heat. So those hot water will be get heated through gas. So they are charging for water and gas both. So and then they'll allow to flow that water inside that house. So that's how they are making the house or the room heat, and that's called the district heating. Now, all these utility companies mostly different, or maybe there is a single utility company which can provide this kind of services. Like one company can provide the services for electricity, gas, water, and waste management like that, or there are different companies. But whatever it may be, the utility companies are divided into four segments. So what are those segments? So somebody definitely has to produce those things. Okay, then somebody will transmit those things and somebody will distribute those things, and finally the retailer will use that. So that means there would be a production unit, there would be a transmission unit, then distribution unit, and finally there would be retailers. So that's we call the value chain of a utility organization. So you can see in this picture, even if your electricity companies are there, so there are generation units. So electricity generation units are there. And if you go in depth, the generation units are of different sources. Like some generation units use coal, some generation units use nuclear energy, some are using solar energy, some are using your hydro energy. So again, those sources, based on the sources, nowadays there are two type of energy sources. One we call green energy, other one is non-green energy, or which are creating pollution in the environment. So based on that, there are many policies or other stuff are getting changed. Now these generation units are mostly outside of the city, or it's a too far from the where the population resides. So what they do, they need another network which will transmit that energy to the people. So they use or get a transmission unit. Like in India, we have six transmission networks: North Grid, South Grid, East, West, Northeast Grid, and Central Grid. So, so these grids are nothing, they're just transmission units. Now, this transmission unit get the energy from the generation unit, transmit it to the distribution unit, and the distribution unit again sell to the retailers. Retailers means your small company who will the front face toward the consumers. Now, transmission unit and distribution unit has the separate networks. Transmission unit has a very big high network. Let it be 132 kilovolt transmission cables, or 66 kilovolt transmission cables. Whereas distribution network has lesser energy flow. So they'll use 33 kilovolt or 11 kV, and then finally it will come to our home place. So the 440 volt or 220 volt or 110 volt processors. So those are maintained through a frequency. So each of this company, like generation company, has its own role. They have to generate the energy at a particular peak, and then they will give back to the transmission network. Transmission network has the role to transfer that energy to the distribution network till the retailer at a particular frequency. So like in India, we use 50 hertz as the frequency. Now the frequency, if it is less or more, the transmission network has to adjust that. Now through these processes, there are transmission and distribution losses. That calculation also need to be done by the transmission company. They has to give the task to the generation unit to generate that much energy, including the transmission and distribution losses. So it will be arrived to the consumer whatever they are expecting. So those kind of responsibilities with transmission network. Whereas distribution network, they are putting the small transformer, DT transformers we call distribution transformers, and they will allocate those transformers to the retailers based on their load. So these load collection information they have to collect from the retailers, and then they'll ask to the transmission network that how much energy they are looking to get. And that should be like in most of the countries, it is 1 year before. Like today is the 25th of January, means the distribution network, the distribution company has to give the transmission network 1 year before, for 25th Jan 2026, how much energy it requires. So that kind of calendar they will give to the transmission network. Transmission network asks to generation companies. Now it may be multiple generation company or single generation company who will fulfill that task, and then they will inject that into the transmission network, and they'll give to the distribution network, and distribution network give to the retailers. Now, if we come to the billing segment, so the billing will happen from the retailer to the consumer. So mostly the retailer is provide the services and the billing to the consumers. The consumers are mostly based on their uses. So it is either domestic consumer or commercial consumer. So commercial consumer again divided into two types, like either it is industrial consumers or a small business. So these kind of consumers are there. So mostly these three type of consumers everywhere, but based on their uses on consumption, it may differ. So even if it is a water utility company, in water utility company, we have to understand from where we'll get the water, from which river bed or which place. And those water will come to the storage unit, or those storage unit will check their pH level, how much acidic it is, or what are the treatments we need to do. And then if it is treated well, we need to put some minerals into that. And once it is correct For the health, then it will be transmitted through pipes, or you can say through tankers. It will go to the distribution unit, and then the distribution company sell to the uh, consumers or retailers. Okay. Similarly, for gas and natural gas, or like you can petroleum, also the same rule. So it will collect from the, mostly it is from the seabed or from any mines, gas mines, and from there it will transmit it and store into the network, and from there, like there are some treatment plants as well. So from there it will be converted into the particular uses of the oil. So in India they add uh, some extra oils, like uh, to reduce the what we call flame of that oil, and then they will supply to the distribution unit, and then they will give to the retailer. So everybody, all kind of utility has these three kind of thing: production, transmission, distribution, and retail. So now the network is like, somebody will generate, somebody will transmit, somebody will distribute, and finally they will create the whole organization. Now, the whole network, if it is controlled by or a government or one organization, we call that a regulated market. If it is divided and distributed with different company and not controlled by government, we call that deregulated market. Now, if you can remember, previously in India, we have a regulated telecom segment where the government is controlling everything. So there are BSNL and MTNL. The BSNL is still there, Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited. They are providing all the services. No other players are there. MTNL is Mahanagar Nigam uh, Telecom Services. So MTNL and BSNL are there. But slowly they unbundle that, they open the market, and the market is become deregulated. So other players enter into the market. The prices of the services get reduced, because previously, even if you receive the call in 90s and 2000, you have to pay for that. Now the call rate is so less that even for a minute it will cost you probably 1 rupee something. So because of the deregulation, because of the competition, the consumers are getting benefit. Now, what are the benefit if we do go for a deregulation market? So, like telecom market, slowly, the energy market going to be deregulated. It is deregulated in like in Europe, in US, but not in India completely. It is deregulated somewhere in India, like if you go to Delhi or Mumbai. So there are other players, like in Mumbai, there are four players. Tata Power is there, Reliance Power is there, then Mahanigar Nigam Power is there, Maharashtra Power is there. So four players are there. So it is kind of a deregulated. In Delhi also, Reliance Power is there, and Delhi Power Corporation is there, but mostly controlled by Reliance Power. So slowly, government trying to deregulate, unbundling these things. So why they are going for deregulation? Now deregulation will increasing the autonomy of value-added levels. Now what is value-added? Now if generation, transmission, distribution all are separate companies, and then everybody will focus on their work very accurately. So the label will be increased and the value will be added more into their services. What more? Increase the regulation in transmission. So regulation in transmission means if it is a separate company, now if all are same company, the transmission losses will be high. So even if that is high, they will put that value into the consumer end, and the consumer has to pay more. But if they're a separate company, and then the regulation will ask to the transmission company to reduce. Now, who is the regulator? Regulator is somebody who is created by the government, who will looking after all these deregulated market. Now they have to regulate that you cannot go beyond 20% losses. So in India, at a certain point, the losses of energy was 40%. Now after that, they introduced multiple projects. So RAPDRP project, APDRP project. So by that, they're reducing now the transmission losses around 20 to 30%. And slowly they're trying to reduce up to 10%. Now that need a huge investment because all these whole network need to be recreated. So that means even if it is deregulated, your transmission regulations will be there and they have to reduce that. Next, easier to privatize if there are multiple generation company, multiple transmission cannot be multiple distribution company, multiple distribution company. So there would be new merger, acquisition, and privatization will happen. So government is not able to um, maintain or manage some company. They can give to some private company with the same profit, and they can move to the only deregulation of the organizations. So that can possible. Or some generation unit, let it be, I can give some example like Adani Power is not able to manage its own generation unit. They can sell it to the Reliance Power. So by that, they have mm, very like easily they can acquire each other's company because everything under deregulation. Similarly, um, the enterprise organization changes will be happen quickly. Like if somebody wants to implement SAP or somebody wants to implement Oracle apps or whatever the technology they want to implement, they can implement easily. So consumer services will be really good. New enterprise types will be introduced, so more jobs will get generated. Diversifying into the new fields will be come into picture, like these companies now introducing the EV points, like charging points. They are also providing different kind of services to the consumers. Now, because of this deregulation, the energy trading will be smooth and it will be added the value to the energy trading. Yeah. Instead of seller's market, like in a regulated market, you have no options. The buyer don't have the option. If the government say you have to pay per unit 20 rupees, they has to pay. Now, instead of that, it will be converted into buyer's market, like your telecom segment. If somebody is providing less money, good service with less price, you will go for that. And finally, the market converted into the buyer market. So these are the benefits of the deregulated market. And to provide good services, the asset standard need to be high. Increase high increase in risk for the traders, energy traders. So they has to provide good services. And there would always be trading on open energy market. That means whatever the energy is available, it has to be sell at that price. It is not like if the energy price is very less, you have to ask more charge. No, because open energy market trading will happen. So customer know who is providing at what price. So almost the market will be labeled. Changing the impact on the customer contract will happen and real-time monitoring can be possible because of the technology. And obviously the competition is there, so the consumer behavior has to be captured. Increase in importance of marketing and controlling. And obviously it also enhance the profitability and supply reliability and technology orientation will be more. So these are the benefit of the deregulated market. Any question on the regulated and why we should go to deregulation?
No, no questions.
Okay, great. So, but when we go to the deregulation, we cannot go completely deregulated because what happened, Genco means generation corporation or companies, they can be deregulated. So these days, people who put the solar panels on their rooftop, they can also sell the energy. But when they sell the energy, they have to sell the energy or inject that energy into a network. And that network is your transmission network. So transmission network is a regulated, because in a country, let it be, or in a state, there will be one transmission network. So let in India, it is not possible that there are parallel two transmission network. Okay, because it is very expensive, and if there will be multiple transmission network, it is difficult to manage, and finally, it is a risk as well. So expensive, more risky, and difficult to manage. Because of that, the transmission network is always one. Okay, and the generation companies are more. So anybody can generate, but they have to go through the same transmission network. So the transmission network is regulated. That's how the energy market is controlled by the government. Then the distribution network, the retail market is deregulated. Okay. Why deregulated? Anybody can buy the energy from the generation company, and that generation company energy will flow through transmission network and come to the retail market, and the retail company will sell to the customer. Okay. So the generation and the retail or the distribution will be deregulated, whereas the transmission will be regulated. So, but the information of the customer has to go to the transmission company. Why? Because the customer is at the end of the day using the energy, and from the customer we understand how much load is there into the network. Okay, the how much load they will use, that is there. One more thing, if you will disconnect, just connect to the same link and I'll be back, okay? Because it is every 40 minutes it will be disconnect. I'll do something in next sessions. I'll probably use the paid version, which will allow me to discuss for 90 minutes in one go. So what happened that, so the consumers, which are mainly the retailers or commercial and industrial customers, retailers means whether they're domestic consumers or business consumers. So now those people will actually using the energy, and from there we can understand how much demand of the energy is there or how much load is there from their end. And by sum it up, we understand how much requirement is there for the distribution company which is providing the energy in that area. And from there, the transmission network understand how much energy they are expecting from the generation company. So the generation company inject the energy, it will come to the distribution company, and from there go to the retail company. So that's how the transmission network, even if it is regulated, it need the information of the consumer. So if we go as a whole end-to-end model of utility organization, it is very complex and very vast. So you can see there are generation company, transmission company, then we have energy services, marketing, customer and information services, pricing strategy, diversifying offer, power marketing. So all these segments can be one organization or one company, and to operate them, you have a operating entity. Okay, so everything will be divided into different segments. So as deregulated market, you will have different company for each type of role. Now, if I go to the deregulated market, how the revenue flow into that? So it's one of the example here you can see. So in this example, you can see there are some village area, or you can say town. This town, people are living there. So whoever is living there, consumers, and their place, like where the connection will be happen, that is called connection object. And at that place, we have device location. So we put the device there. So the consumers come to a company. This is a retail company, let it be, or it is the retail company. and they want a services from there. So they are looking to get the energy from this retail company. So this retail company put a meter there, and they know what is their load. So what is their load? They collect it, ask to the distribution company to give that much energy to this particular person or to the particular point, and want it provide that energy there, and they can use. Now, before that, this energy will come from the generation unit. So generation unit generate the energy, give to the transmission network. The transmission network put a meter there and collect the information, how much energy they inject into the transmission network. The transmission network also put another meter, and it will collect how much they inject into the distribution network, and the distribution network link to it to the consumer and put another meter, and that meter reading is collected by the retailers and give back to the distribution company. Now, once these meter readings are available, they understand how much they will charge. So each one has a different tariff. So let it be the generation company may ask 1 rupee per unit to the transmission network, not transmission network, actually it will ask to the distribution network, and the transmission network will charge of the network. So they are not charging for the energy, they will charge for the uses of their network. So they'll put a condition like, if you are taking 1 unit from my network, I'll put 20 paisa per unit. So now this 1 unit become 120, and it is available for the distribution network. Now the distribution network linked to the consumer, but they know they have to maintain their distribution network. So they add on some maintenance charges of 50 paisa. So it become 150. Now this retailer, the retailer actually provide the invoices to the consumer. So what they do, they have their own office. They have to provide the services, meter change, meter reading, all the stuff they are doing, and obviously providing the invoices. So they add that 30 paisa for each unit, and they per unit become 2 rupees. And based on that 2 rupees, which is your tariff per unit, they will generate the invoice and give to the consumer. And the consumer, once get the invoice, they has to pay. And once they pay, that same money will go back to the distributor company, then to the transmission company, and finally to the generation company. So this is the whole flow. And through this, we call that settlement of the organization. So it will go two ways. One is energy settlement, other is your financial settlement. So energy settlement and revenue settlement will be happen. So the whole SAP ISU, what they do, they try to do this process smoothly. Now, you may be work in a generation company, in a transmission company, in a distribution company, or a retail company. You can implement the solution, the SAP solution for each of these companies. So basically what happened, the generation, transmission, distribution, and the customer services or billing, which is your retail segment, all these, they need a complete solution to provide all these services. And what they are looking some kind of device management, which will collect the meter reading or provide the maintenance to the meter reading. Now, when the device come into picture, it need maintenance, it needs specific audit. And so for that, we need work management. And obviously, the consumers are there. The consumers will sometime they will connect, disconnect. So we need move in, move out. And as each segment, there are meters. We need a measuring consumption mechanism. And finally, we create the bill and invoice to give to the consumers. And the consumer will pay back to the collection. And to maintain the grievances of the consumer, if they have any complaint, if they need to give some feedback, so we have another segment called customer services. And these all things are created for the retail segment, and slowly, slowly, we try to implement that into distribution, transmission, and generation. So mostly when we discuss our whole segment, mostly it will be focused on the retail segment because that's how the SAP is best fit. And we'll discuss about the distribution little bit, but not as a whole. Generation is, we are not going to touch generation segment. That is very straightforward. And that need a lot of settlement knowledge, which is like people who has 30 years experience, they do that kind of stuff. But yes, that is we're not going to touch because ISU is specific looking towards distribution and retail. Now, if we move forward, we can see SAP ISU cannot stand by itself. What it means now, SAP is like it was introduced in 1972, and from there it is enhancing its models. So the SAP ISU is one of the solution actually. So initially the SAP is developed for the commercial purposes. So like it's a ERP system and it is created to smooth run of a company by using the commercial perspective. But with time, it developed different modules, and each of these modules are useful for different work. Now they created a combination of these modules, and they create a solution, and that solution will be useful for a particular company or particular area or domain. Now, like for utility domain, the solution they created called SAP ISU CCS. So I stands for industrial specific, U stand for utility, CCS stand for customer care service